All right, everyone. Welcome into an episode of Around the Octagon. Today we have Luke and San. We're going to talk about UFC Des Moines. But before we get into it, we have a little fight news to touch on. To start off, Luke's boy, Max Holloway, got announced he is fighting Dustin Poirier in his retirement fight at UFC 318. Luke, how are you feeling about this fight announcement?
I feel like we kind of knew it was coming to start off. They've been kind of rumored for at least a couple months that this was going to happen. And then I heard last week, probably around the time we filmed, maybe right after that, it was this fight card in July in Louisiana and was going to be a pay-per-view. So kind of just confirmation. But I don't really like it at all as a Max fan, and I really like DP as well. And if he's 2-0 against Max Holloway. He beat him at featherweight and beat him at lightweight. And the lightweight was kind of, other than the knockout to Ilya and maybe the third Volk fight, probably Max Holloway's worst beatdown. And I think it really showed his toughness, but he got rocked a bunch. Didn't fall, but he got rocked and landed back on the cage a couple times there. His face was huge after that fight. Obviously, that was like 5 or 6 years ago. This is we saw a lightweight Max Holloway that we haven't seen before in the Gaethje fight, which, is promising to me, but I really don't think anyone wins in a fight like this. But I do enjoy the legacy. I think it's two guys who are, about to fight for a trilogy, both guys going in the Hall of Fame. It's just one of those where you're going to hate to see DP leave a winner or a loser. And if Max loses or wins, it's going to, even if he wins, it's going to leave a sour taste. And if he loses, it's going to suck even more because it shoots him right back to, kind of square one after he lost that third Volk fight in terms of what he does next. So yeah, not really looking forward to it. Obviously, when these guys put on a show, you always got to tune in. But from a fan standpoint, it kind of makes me sad, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I have a couple things about this one, and one of which being it is weird seeing a trilogy in which one guy's won both the fights prior. Like, you really never see that. So it's, more of a thing of circumstances and just how these fights aligned. And then
let me just interject real quick. I think Max Holloway might be the first person ever to get back-to-back trilogies where he's lost five fights out of the five.
Yeah,
that might be it. That might be a first.
That might very well be a first. And another thing being like why they're able to make this fight is like Max moved up to lightweight against Gaethje and like legitimately did it and looked phenomenal after Gaethje knocked out Poirier. And when they fought the last time, Max wasn't like a true lightweight. So he's fighting under different circumstances. And I'm curious to see like what the early odds are on this. I'd imagine it'd be close to a toss-up, probably Dustin, maybe like minus 130. I don't see Dustin being much more like aggressively favored than that. It should be very close to a toss-up. And I don't even know who I favor in this fight. I'd have to go back and watch the previous fights and whatnot. But I'm excited to see this one. I don't even want to give like an early prediction.
Yeah, it is tough to call this one out. But I will say, as far as like from the trilogy side of it, it is one of the few trilogies, at least for me, that I think is like still exciting, especially since it's been so long since their last fight, and they both evolved in crazy ways since then. But yeah, I just keep thinking about like the Figgy Moreno, like quadrilogy or however the hell many fights they had, and I was just like, I would just hate seeing that headlining a card. It's like, fight someone else. I know there's not crazy movement in that weight class, but yeah, this is a trilogy I'm excited to see. And I will say, to kind of defer from you guys' opinions, I don't think I hate this matchup at all. I think it's great. It does suck for fans of the sport because obviously they're two fan favorites, but I think it's exciting, and I think it's what Dustin Poirier deserves as a retirement fight. Like, it's not like a bullshit fight that just get an easy knockout and get out of there. It's a legitimate, like, very high level fight in the lightweight division, and both those fighters are gonna have a great chance of walking away with a highlight reel clip there. So very excited for that to come.
Before we move on, one quick question for you guys: like, do they co-main this with like a women's title fight, right? And then do they have the BMF as the like actual legitimate main event since it is Dustin's retirement fight? Like, is that how you'd think?
I feel like you kind of, I don't know. I feel like you almost can't put that fight as a not a headliner just because their names, but it being like a women's title fight, I feel like that kind of precedes a BMF title.
Yeah, so it's like, how do they do that? Because I'd probably want to have a legitimate belt on the line for this pay-per-view, regardless Like BMF
Yeah.
sweet, but I'd still want to have something, you know.
It's
No,
putting the
100%.
UFC, yeah, it's definitely putting UFC in a tough spot. Obviously, Dana's cooking for the summer, but it's 2 or 3 weeks after International Fight Week, so that's going to be a double champ card.
Yeah.
So I mean, it would be hard to set it up, but you also have like flyweight. You could throw a fight on as a co-main. I don't think there's a chance in hell that this isn't the main, regardless of who's on it.
Yeah.
They're giving
true.
DP his flowers for sure.
Dude,
and
I
yeah,
don't know.
I just didn't know if they'd co-main with like a women's title fight or something. Like you'd assume this would be the main event, and it's going to be. But yeah, it maybe it'd be tough too.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if there is a women's title fight, I can't think of when it was, or which card it was, or who was even fighting. But I think that's happened before, where there was like a women's title fight, and then like an absolute banger for the co-main.
maybe
That
it
was
was.
just like,
It might have been Poirier Gaethje. Oh no, that was Usman.
yeah.
Usman.
Well, regardless, well, I guess we'll see when the schedules come out.
yeah, all right. Well, moving on, we have Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley announced. Usman will have his first fight in 20 months since his majority loss to Khamzat Chimaev at middleweight. So that's an exciting fight announcement. Son, I'll let you kick this one off. What's your early thoughts going into this fight?
I mean, I've said it before in a few other, podcasts and a few other, film days. I love Buckley, and I think he has a legitimate chance of, grabbing the belt at that weight class. Obviously, with Ian Garry having the performance that he did last weekend, it does make it tougher because he is a guy that, we kind of thought he was plateauing for a few fights, skill level wise, but, in his last two, he's just kind of, really, really brought it and just absolutely amazed everyone, me included. I mean, I didn't think he was going to win that Carlos fight at all. But going back to Buckley and Usman, I think I'm going to back Buckley, and I've been a supporter of Buckley for a long time now. He's legit. He's another guy. I mentioned Ian Garry. He's another guy that he kind of looked like he was plateauing. Then he switched weight classes, and now he's an absolute demon. Like he'd give anybody in that weight class problems. And then I think there's with Ian Garry's last fight, I think he makes a good good case for himself to get a title fight. If he wins that and gets the belt, I think we could get a Buck versus Cuck fight card for the title, which would be awesome. Those are Buckley's words, not mine, although I did use them. But yeah, that'd be awesome. I do think. I mean, I think it's just kind of Usman's time, and Buckley knows that his body isn't what it used to be, especially his knees. He's been calling him out all the time. So it's sad to say, but I think I'm gonna have to side with Buckley here on this one.
Yeah, just to update, I looked up the odds for the Poirier Holloway fight. Poirier is currently -115 to Holloway's 105, and the Buckley Usman fight is Buckley -205 to Usman +165 currently. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Son. I think there was a point in time where I started counting Buckley out, and he hit that. We see it a lot. I mean, saw Charles Oliveira, seen it with a bunch of guys where they kind of hit that point and then they turn it on. And Buckley has done that. I bet against him a couple times, and I seem to regret it every time recently. The 20 months is that's a long time to take off with those knees and the age. And he was on him and Cejudo's podcast, and they had Izzy on. And they were talking about like kind of the fall from grace the other day. It just kind of seems these guys are taking. Obviously, I don't know how much he's training, and I'm sure it's a lot. But I really just hope he's like trying to recover those knees. But we also can make the counter argument that against Khamzat, Usman's probably looked the best since Burns. So you never know. Usman's a champ. He has the champ mentality. It's a 5-rounder. Anything could happen. I think I have to break that down once we get closer, but the early pick for me would be Buckley. I think you're right, Son. The rise continues here, and it sets up a perfect, leeway into what we do with this division going forward.
-205 is just like, yeah. Like against Usman, like, yeah.
Yeah, it does suck to see against him, but I don't know. I almost want to say it's fair. I mean,
I don't know, man, because 20 months is such a long time, and the knees are a problem. And Like, I think Father Time has caught up with Kamaru Usman, but he's still Kamaru Usman. And yeah, the majority decision loss to Hamzat up a weight class because that was at middleweight, not welterweight. And I thought he lost. I thought it was a 10-8 first round for Hamzat, then 10-9 Hamzat, then 10-8 Usman in the third, which still, regardless, very competitive fight with Hamzat Chimaev, but it was 20 months ago. And now you're just that much older, you know? So I lean Buckley as well. But if like those odds were to skew more in Buckley's favor, I might just have to throw a few bucks on Kamaru Usman just for old time's sake. But moving on and staying in the division, Ian Garry took care of rising prospect Carlos Prates. In my opinion, Ian Garry is a top 3 welterweight in the world, along the likes of Shavkat, Rakhmonov, and the champ Bilal Muhammad. I think those 3 are the top 3. What's next for Ian Garry? I think there's 2 ways they can go with this. I think he has to win one more fight before the title fight, and I think it's either going to be Joaquin Buckley if he beats Kamaru Usman, because if Usman wins, they're likely going to give him the title shot, or it'll be the loser of Bilal Muhammad versus JDM, who I think is going to be JDM, so I think they can make that fight, and then it's win that, and you get the title shot. But yeah, Ian Garry, he just looked very impressive, in my opinion, in that fight against Carlos Prates. Prates didn't fight his normal game. It looked like the first 3 rounds wasn't really throwing crazy volume. Garry kind of just did his thing, outboxed him, showed the wrestling, didn't really have too much success with it, but made Prates think about him being able to switch it up. But yeah, impressive performance from Garry. Luke, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, definitely impressive. I agree with basically everything you said. I think we kind of picked it for us who picked Garry that it was going to be that kind of fight where he was just going to, every time it seemed like Prates was getting a little bit of momentum, he would dive at a takedown. Had some success on the takedowns, but I thought Prates also looked pretty impressive defending them. And Garry didn't do too much damage when he did end up on the ground or have his back against the cage. But I think, like you said, I think Prates, it was one of those fights where you step up in the intellectual game of MMA, and it took him a little bit to figure it out. And I mean, we saw him kind of pour it on in the end and almost get him out of there, but at the end, Garry got his hand raised. I know we talked about this at the end of last podcast. I don't think it did detriments to Prates losing that fight. I think he looked good. I know we were texting about it. I wouldn't be mad if he even went up in the rankings with a loss. I know that normally doesn't happen, but I still think he's right there. I mean, for a guy to jump that level of competition in the time that he has, I was impressed. I was impressed by Garry as well. And I think, Garry is next in line. I know Buckley's right there. I know Gary's the backup fighter for that title fight in a couple weeks. I thought, yeah, just great performance by both guys. Looking forward to seeing that fight, a rematch, hopefully for a title down the road.
Yeah, very disappointing. I did have Carlos in the fight. I was pretty upset because we didn't see the normal Carlos that we usually see out there. We didn't see like the aggressive, just putting absolute hands on his opponent. But I think one of the big things that kind of contributed to that and kind of Ian being able to nullify Carlos's offense was, Ian's a very lengthy guy. He's tall. He's got the reach. But not only that, but he's a very capable person with that body type as a fighter. And I just don't think that's something that Carlos has, ran into in the past to the degree that Ian Garry is skill wise. So having somebody with that, as lanky and as tall as Ian Garry is compared to Carlos, who's pretty similar. Usually Carlos has a very clear physical advantage with whoever he's fighting, whether it's length or height. So I think him being kind of on an even playing field there, and then like you guys said, just the mental IQ and technical skills that Ian brings to the table. I think obviously we saw how that happened. But when he was able to kind of corner Ian those few times in the fight, I'm sure everybody's been seeing it all over. And for those that haven't watched the fight, it looked like he could have gotten out of there a few times. He had a lot of opportunities, but I think at that point the momentum was just so far in Ian's corner that I don't even think Carlos thought that he could get him out of there when he had the opportunity. So really, I think the mental game of it, like you guys said too, is kind of just disappointing on Carlos's part. But I think he's right there. I mean, he's really new to the UFC. He's got a lot to learn, and if I don't think, I don't think, like you said, Luke. I don't think it should be, this loss should come to any detriment of his ranking. If anything, even move up a spot. But I wouldn't hate it if he sat right where he's at.
Yeah, agreed. And especially since I hold Ian Garry in such high regards, considering him a top 3 welterweight, a loss like that isn't anything that, I'd hold against a guy like Carlos Prates. But
Yeah.
the last thing that I wanted to mention here, we had a good story come out of that fight night last weekend. Malcolm Wellmaker announced before the fight, he's been saying it for years actually, that if he makes his way into the UFC and gets that $50,000 performance bonus, he is quitting his welding job. And it just so happened with the round 1 knockout, he got the $50K, and he announced he is now a full-time fighter and has quit his welding job. So cool story. Happy to hear that. Impressive knockout. He's looked pretty legit, and I'm excited to see what he does next.
Yeah, definitely cool when you see these guys that are just coming in. You kind of see them, go balls to the wall of the UFC. Especially with a knockout and a finish like that, it's exciting to see what he could do in the future.
Yeah, 100%. Now let's move into this Des Moines card. We have, to kick off the main card, Jeremy Stephens, the hometown guy, making his UFC return, opposed to Mason Jones. Jeremy Stephens has sort of resurrected his career in BKFC after losing his last, I don't even know how many UFC fights, and then I believe he went over to PFL after, and then BKFC. He's had some success there. Now he's here on a 1-fight return. Son, I'll let you touch on this one first. What do you feel about this Jeremy Stephens Mason Jones matchup?
Yeah, I'm excited to say I think Jeremy Stephens is gonna, break a UFC record this weekend. I am, it is unfortunate that I have to say it's the most losses record, but he's 1 loss away from Clay Guida's 19 losses, I think it is, in the UFC. So all jokes aside, I mean Jeremy Stephens, a legendary, I guess, a pioneer for UFC, but I don't think he gets it done this weekend. Mason Jones is, I guess, a knockout artist of sorts. He's been getting a lot of knockout wins. A lot of his wins come from knockout. I think those few stints that Jeremy Stephens did with the BKFC is really kind of turned his brain into even more mush. And I see Jeremy Stephens getting knocked out this weekend. Unfortunately, you kind of hate to see that from the UFC legends and kind of the pioneers of the sport, the guys that have just been in the game for so long. Hate to see it, but I think Mason Jones walks out of there with a knockout.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to take it by decision. But I agree with everything you said. Obviously, great story. Jeremy Stephens has been lighting it up over there in bare knuckle. One of the few guys who gets a call back at this point in his career to fight in the UFC, and I think it's great by the UFC to pay homage to a guy like Jeremy Stephens. It's just why we love the sport. On the other end, Mason Jones, kind of a weird story too. I think he went. Let me see. I got it up. He was 1-2 and 1 in the UFC, and then they sent him back to Cage Warriors, where he went on a tangent, winning 4 straight. You're right, 3 of them by knockout. But I think this fight just comes down to Jeremy Stephens is gonna I think he's gonna try to stand and bang, and Mason Jones does have the grappling advantage here. I think that's kind of what the odds are implying, that if this gets out of the first with Jeremy Stephens and Mason Jones, I think Mason Jones will, show his youth and just control this fight. I have Mason Jones by decision.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Jeremy Stephens is he's 38 years old. Maybe he'll have some sort of momentum fighting in his hometown of Des Moines. And, he's had some success in BKFC as of recent, but this isn't bare knuckle. And if he wants to just dig in and brawl like it is bare knuckle, you can get taken down. There's different ways this fight can go. Mason Jones is a capable grappler, so you can't just sit there, dig your heels in, and bite down on your mouth guard and throw. It's just not going to work. And yeah, you touched on the story of Mason Jones there, Luke, and even his UFC losses aged pretty well in Ludovic Klein, who's had some very solid UFC wins, and Mike Davis, who's no slouch as well. And the win he picked up was over David Onama, who's now ranked, I believe. He's ranked now after picking up a rank win last week. So he fought solid competition in his short UFC tenure. So, I'm not holding it against him that he didn't get that contract. Sometimes the ball just doesn't roll in your court. But yeah, I'm taking Mason Jones here as well. Method. I don't know. Jeremy Stevens he's tough. I could see Jones getting him out of there or a decision. Either one is plausible. Moving on, we have a bantamweight bout between Cory Sandhagen and Serhiy Sidey. It's an interesting fight. Personally, I like Smotherman at these odds. Both prospects have faced decent competition, with Smotherman taking out Chase Hadley in his UFC debut, or Jake Hadley, sorry, but taking out Jake Hadley in your UFC debut, like that's a very solid win. And Serhiy took out Garrett Armfield, which again, solid win. It was controversial, so I don't know how much stake to put in that. Luke, I'll let you take it from here. What are you thinking in this fight?
Yeah, I'm all over Smotherman here. I just think you hit on it too. I just kind of like his style of fighting. I think he's impressive, and right now he is the current underdog against Serhiy, and I just see him getting it done here. I think he's the more complete fighter, and I think this is a great underdog play with plus odds. So I'm taking Smotherman, the babyface killer. It's a great nickname too.
Fuck both you guys and fuck this babyface bitch. All right, and I will say that because he beat Mondo, my boy Mondo, our boy Mondo Gutierrez in the Fury promotion. I will and cannot support a man that's done that to one of my boys. So fuck Smotherman. I hope he gets absolutely obliterated this weekend. I hope I'm actually I have like two countries that I never really support in anything, and that's like Canada and France. I'm gonna fucking side with the Canadian here. All right, I don't give a shit. I'm going with the city, dude. I didn't really look into this fight too much. I just know that this fucking Smotherman dude's not a guy that I like. I'm not gonna talk shit directly to a fighter here, but fuck that guy. I'm taking City by hopefully sending Smotherman's jaw up to the fucking nosebleeds and getting knocked out.
All right.
So yeah.
Back to
I did not even see that he fought Mondo when I was doing research.
And honestly, that makes me feel better if he beat Mondo. Like Mondo's solid, and that's a solid win that he picked up. That honestly makes me feel more confident in Smotherman. And I didn't even say I was picking him yet, but yeah, that is my play.
Bro, that shit was fucking lucky, bro. He didn't mean to throw that flying knee, dude.
I am going Cameron Smotherman. And another thing about him is he just has a very high output and forward pressure, and I don't know how Serhiy Sidey is gonna bode with that forward pressure. I don't think that's something that he really likes when people get up in his face. He kind of likes fighting at range, and he's not much of a counter striker per se. So I think the pressure is gonna be a problem. And yeah, I think Smotherman's fought some good competition. So yeah, I'm taking Cameron Smotherman here.
Son, how did that fight go? I'm looking at some of the stats. I did not watch that fight prior to this podcast, but a lot of people, 70% to 30% were on Gutierrez.
No, I mean Mondo's fighting a good fight. He just got caught. It was unfortunate. Kind of in my books and the way I looked at it, not lucky because obviously it's a very skillful move to throw a flying knee in any point in a fight. Obviously Smotherman is a very good fighter. But yeah, I think from what I remember, Mondo was in a really good spot and he's in a good position to win that fight. It just didn't go his way.
Yeah, damn. But all right, we'll go back to the card here. We have a bantamweight bout of Montel Jackson at a minus 198 favorite opposed to Daniel Marcos at a plus 160. This is a very fun fight too, in my opinion. Outside of the two big ones at the co-maining and the main events, this is probably the fight on the main card I'm most excited about. And usually don't see undefeated fighters at plus odds, so that's a little bit interesting with Daniel Marcos here. But San, I'll let you get into this one now.
Yeah, I mean it is tough. I'm glad you mentioned the undefeated record. I mean, obviously that's very notable. It's something that you look for in a fighter. You see somebody undefeated. But I will say, Montel Jackson is a damn good fighter as well. I mean, his last fight, getting Blackshear out of there in the first round, in seconds, super impressive. His last few fights have been going to knockout. He's been getting a lot of knockouts recently. I think it's fair that Marcos is at plus odds here. And I kind of do feel shaky with a 0 on a record, usually, unless you see a guy, like the fighting nerds, you get certain types of guys, like Alex Pereira when he was in the UFC, or when he is in the UFC, but in his rise in the UFC, there's certain guys that you look at them and you're like, all right, they're very deserving in that 0. I don't feel super confident with Daniel Marcos's 0 over there. So I'm going to lean Montel Jackson here. And I can't tell a method of winning, but I do think Montel takes this one.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think, especially the last fight against Blackshear, Montel Jackson, I feel like a lot of people were kind of doubting him going into that fight, and he lit that cage on fire with that first round knockout. I'm a Montel Jackson fan. I enjoy watching him fight. The 0 does scare me as well, but Montel Jackson's 5-0 in his last 5 fights in the UFC. I think Daniel Marcos might be around 5 fights in the UFC undefeated too. But yeah, I think when you're a guy fighting and that 0, when you're undefeated, that 0 is always in the back of your head, no matter what. I think not that it like these guys are professionals, not that it provides doubt in your mind, but I think it's always like, oh, I can't lose this 0, I can't lose this 0, and it causes for mistakes when the fight is going on. Montel Jackson doesn't have that problem. He's already lost, so weight off a lot of guys' shoulders, and he's on a roll, man. I'm just riding the roll right here. I think he gets it done by KO. I don't think Marcos is he really has never shown like getting rocked in the fights. But I think this is definitely the highest level of competition that he has fought, especially in the UFC. And I think Montel Jackson is going to pose some problems for him here. So I got Montel Jackson by KO.
Zach, before you jump in here, I will say Daniel Marcos has been taking a lot of his last 2 fights in decision, which is kind of, almost, to me, it's almost an indicator of, kind of slowing down with output and maybe skill or running into those more skilled guys in the division. So definitely another thing to think about in this fight.
Yeah, Montel Jackson, I'm happy you touched on this a little bit, Luke. He does have serious power, so I could see him getting Marcos out of there. Like, the power is definitely on the side of Jackson. What scares me is the inactivity of Montel Jackson. Like, he's fought twice since 2022. Even then, I mean, he had a couple fights in 2022. He had 1 fight in 2022, so he's fought 3 fights in 2021. Then it's a bit like, okay, Daniel Marcos is definitely more active, but Montel Jackson should be the better wrestler as well. But it's weird. Like, I have trouble predicting this fight because you want to look at Montel Jackson's career in the UFC, and he's had a lengthy career in the UFC, but just never fought higher competition. It didn't matter how many wins he's strung together in a row. The competition never increased, and that kind of tells you, like, okay, this guy's not legit. The UFC doesn't think he's legit, but they keep him around for a reason. But I can't act like Daniel Marcos has fought legit competition either. Like, at the end of the day, I got to go with the side of power and the grappling upside and go with Montel Jackson here. But I do think Daniel Marcos is a live dog. I'm just not really sold on either guy, I'd say. But moving on to a welterweight bout of Santiago Ponzinibbio, my bad, opposed to Daniel Rodriguez. It's a fun matchup too. Luke, I'll let you kick this one off. Are you going with Ponzi or Daniel Rodriguez?
Yeah, and no, not hating on this fight, but this is definitely my least favorite on the main card. I don't really have too much skin in the game in terms of fandom for either of these guys. So for me, I'm going to go Ponzinibbio. I do think he slightly is better. I don't know if he's the younger guy. They're actually both 38 years old. Yeah. I just think recently with Daniel Rodriguez, I haven't been like uberly impressed in any aspect with the fights that he's been putting on. Even in his win, I think who did he beat last fight?
Rodriguez?
No, Alex Morano by split decision. He lost to Gastelum, lost to Garry. I mean, those are tough guys, but at the same time, I'm just not uberly impressed with Daniel Rodriguez's output in the recent fights and going to split decision in his only win in the last 2 years. I just don't think I could throw my money on him at this point in time, so I'm going Ponzinibbio here.
Yeah, I'm kind of split on this one.
Yeah.
This is tough. This is very tough. I've been bouncing around a lot. I initially was gonna go Ponzinibbio, just because I mean, obviously he's had a good fight this year. He's got a knockout this year. He's obviously has his losses. But I don't know. I was gonna go Santiago also because I absolutely hate Danny Rodriguez's tattoos. I think that's another story for another day. But I'm not a big fan of him, and I've mentioned before the style points are big for me, so I hate him. I hate the tattoos, so I want to bet against them. But and I also hate to say it, like the MMA math, is kind of where my head's at here. But they've had pretty similar competition, and Daniel Rodriguez has just had more success with similar guys. Which obviously MMA math, we're back to that topic again. But I don't know. I'm going Daniel Rodriguez here. I think they've had pretty similar careers. They're in similar spots. Physically they're pretty similar, height and length wise, age wise as well. So I'm just gonna take the other side and go Daniel Rodriguez here.
Yeah, I mean, both guys are a little aged out of their prime a bit, but I think Ponzinibbio should hold the grappling advantage if he wants to go to it. I think Ponzinibbio might be a slightly better striker. I don't know, like technically, if he's a better striker, but I think he's a little bit more scrappy. He builds into the fights well. He's a little bit more game to go out there and get hit, and that kind of is the game of mixed martial arts. So, in a fight where I do kind of score it as a toss-up, I like that scrappiness of Ponzinibbio, and I see him boding well if any grappling does get involved, and I'm going to go Ponzi. Moving on, we have a middleweight matchup between Bo Nickal opposing Reinier de Ridder. Bo Nickal, the undefeated prospect. This is the first time he's going out there not minus 1,000 or greater. Right now, he's at like minus 280, 285. I've seen him up at minus 300, which I do not really love. But this should be an interesting fight to see really how good Bo Nickal is. And this gives him a legitimate chance to crack into the rankings, start looking up, and you can start establishing a timeline to the top if he is able to get through Reinier de Ridder here. Son, I'll let you kick this one off. I already know what you're going to say, but where are you going with this fight?
I hate to oppose him because I really like Bo Nickal. I think he's a cool prospect. I think he's one of like the more interesting guys that they've been bringing in the UFC. Dana's really been kind of nursing him in the UFC, trying, making sure that he's fully developed and ready for the next step. So I think, he is a prized possession of Dana White's, fighters. And to the fans as well. He's easily one of the fan favorites. He's, just very likable guy. But I am gonna lean towards Reinier de Ridder here, and to me, it's just the experience thing in MMA. I don't think this is anything against Bo Nickal at all. I think he's a very capable fighter. I think he's obviously a world-class wrestler, one of the best in the UFC by far. But Reinier de Ridder, when we've mentioned this before, he's the awkward fighter. He's going to make the fights awkward, and almost to the point where the other fighter's not exactly going to know what to do just because it's so sporadic or weird, or his movements are weird. He's kind of hard to telegraph because he's got a strange build kind of to him. It's easy to say, Bo Nickal's just going to wrestle fuck him, and for the however many rounds the fight is, and they're gonna he's gonna get his hand raised at the end. I don't know if he's able to do enough to get the points off of de Ridder. I'd like to say that he can take the takedowns and just get points off that. But I think de Ridder is gonna have an opportunity to take Bo Nickal to the deep waters here. He is a very skilled fighter. As weird as he looks out there sometimes, he is a very good fighter. He's very skilled and very, very experienced. So I think he takes it. Striking wise, I think he definitely has a strong edge there. Bo Nickal loves to throw the overhands. He's not really going to be able to do that too much with a guy that's that tall. I don't know. I'm going to Ritter. I like this play. I mean, very much a toss up here. Bo Nickal being minus 200, maybe a little bit too favoring of him. I would have had him, in the hundreds. I still think he's a favorite, in the fight, but I do think the Ritter wins. Just for this experience, and he's probably going to bring, in my mind, he brings Bo Nickal to places that he hasn't been in the UFC yet, especially in the striking realm. So I'm going to Ritter here.
Yeah, you made a lot of good points. For me, this is. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, and then Son, once you disconnected, me and Zach talked a little further on it. This is a tough one. I think that you hit on every point. De Ridder, the MMA experience, the extremely high level jiu-jitsu for a wrestler is the number one thing that you'd be concerned about. And De Ridder has all of that. He has all that that he's going to bring in the cage, and I think it's going to be a banger of a fight. I'm very excited for it. My number one thing, that the reason I am picking Bo Nickal isn't anything really to do with the skill at this point. I think that when you have a guy like Bo Nickal, and you touched on it, he's kind of got that plot by the UFC, national champion, one of the best wrestlers on the planet, and then you have him getting booed, and kind of getting fraud checked by the fans. They're booing in the last fight. Not a great performance against Paul Craig. I think that lights a fire under a guy like Bo Nickal, who has been through the Penn State wrestling camps. I mean, I know kids not who wrestled at Penn State, but have been to Penn State camps when they're in high school, and they would talk about Bo Nickal screaming the whole training camp, like just firing guys up. That kind of competitiveness that sets apart, guys in the UFC that weren't at D1 level wrestling. And not that De Ridder's not a competitor. He's one of the best, at what he does in the world, and has been for a while. I just think there's something that I think we're going to see another level of Bo Nickal. And obviously the jiu-jitsu scares me to death. But you got to think he's been training that nonstop since he got this fight, and nonstop. I mean, the last fight was Paul Craig. He was training it as well. And he's been, he's competed against guys like Gordon Ryan. So he's no stranger to this game. And I don't know. I do think before Bo Nickal does have a chance to fight for the title, someone is going to take that 0. And I think we kind of talked about it before. It's going to be weight off his shoulders, and we're going to see another level of Bo Nickal. I don't think that's going to be De Ridder on Saturday. I have Bo Nickal. I think it's going to be a very entertaining fight, but I have him by decision here. I think he's just going to offensive wrestle him to death. And we're going to see another level of Bo Nickal we haven't seen before.
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if Bo Nickal took the striking approach to this matchup and took the similar approach to I hope not too, but the similar approach to what he did with Paul Craig, because I seriously think he'll outstrike Reinier De Ridder. I seriously 100% do. I think De Ridder is a sloppy striker. I don't hold Bo Nickal in high regards as far as the striking goes, but De Ridder was losing a lot of exchanges to Gerald Meerschaert. He's shown that he can be hit by that overhand right. Bo Nickal likes that overhand right. He's younger. They're both huge. Like, De Ridder is a big man. Bo Nickal is going to be a big guy too. So I don't think the size of De Ridder is going to pose much of a problem to Bo Nickal. I think De Ridder might try to initiate some of the grappling exchanges. Bo Nickal will win him on the feet. And what scares me is really solely De Ridder's submission threats.
Yeah.
But Bo Nickal, having so much experience in grappling in general, I know it's not necessarily jiu-jitsu, but he has a great understanding of body control. He has a great feel in general, which is a huge thing. And you saw it throughout his college wrestling career as well. Like, if you look at how he pinned Miles Martin in the NCAA finals, it was just pure feel. Like, he feels when a guy's in danger, your body weight is not in a good position, and be able to maneuver that and put you in trouble. He has that ability. And I think he will just stay safe when he is grappling. He'll be on top when they are going throughout grappling exchanges for the majority of time. So, I think he'll keep his arms tight. He'll be able to control the hips, body control. Just really, it'll be control time when he's on top. I don't know. Hopefully he can try to have some offensive grappling as well when he is on top, and try to rain down some ground and pound. Like, that'd be big. But I see him kind of coasting as far as the grappling goes, outstriking De Ridder a little bit. Maybe it'll be boring. I don't know, but I am definitely leaning Bo Nickal here to continue his undefeated run.
Yeah, it should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm excited for that fight. I'm a big Bo Nickal guy, so that might be the fight I'm looking forward to the most. It probably is, but we do have a fun one up next in the main event. We have Cory Sandhagen opposing Deiveson Figueiredo in maybe a title eliminator. I mean, as far as title eliminator goes, whoever loses isn't fighting for a title anytime soon. Whoever wins, if it is Cory Sandhagen, he could fight for the title in his next bout. If you look at, you have the Sugar versus Merab fight next, Cory Sandhagen would be fresh blood to either. So he is probably the guy the UFC would want to win to give fresh blood to whoever the champ is. And that is displayed by Vegas as well, coming out as a minus 500 favorite. Luke, I'll let you start on this one. I know you're a Sandhagen fan. Let's hear your thoughts on this fight.
Yeah, I'm a huge Sandhagen guy. Probably, I mean, Sugar Sean's my guy in this weight class, but Sandhagen's a close second. I just love the way he fights. I love that he's not an intimidating guy and is well rounded in every level of mixed martial arts. And I know he lost his last fight out, and he hasn't fought since the loss to Umar. But I thought he fought a great fight in that fight against Umar. I think Umar is going to be the champ someday, and he just ran into a brick wall. That's Merab Dvalishvili. But I'm all over Sandhagen here. I like Figgy too. I just think that Figgy's great at what he does, and he has that knockout power, and he has performed well other than the Purion loss up a weight class. I just think Sandhagen does. I think Sandhagen does all the things that Jan does well as well. I know Jan beat him. I just think everything that Jan posed a threat to, Sandhagen has that as well. I think it's Sandhagen's time. We've kind of seen him been at that title eliminator, that interim, and never really follow through. He's always that really important fight that he needs to win. He always seems to come up a little bit short. I don't see it happening here. I think you nailed it on the head. This is the next title eliminator. Sugar Sean and Cory Sandhagen have been kind of talking back and forth for years now. So I think that fight makes sense, even though they probably book Merab if Sugar wins. And Merab is the only guy in the top 5 that Merab hasn't fought is Cory Sandhagen. So I think this is just, same kind of thing with the plot. This is perfect lined up for the plot to keep the division moving, get Sandhagen first, his first title shot that isn't interim, I believe. So I got Sandhagen here. I think Figueiredo puts on a good performance. I don't think either of the guys get one another out of here. So I'm taking Sandhagen by decision.
Yeah, I mean, Deiveson Figueiredo is a Brazilian legend. He's, a UFC legend. He's given us countless shows. But with that said, I am backing Sandhagen in this fight. I think you guys hit all the major points that anybody would in this fight. I mean, Figgy obviously has looked really good recently. He's had good fights. But Sandhagen's fight against Umar really, really surprised me. Even though he lost, he brought him to decision, which I wasn't expecting. I had bet on Umar, I think by sub on that fight. I don't even remember what I bet on honestly, but I did know I had him finishing Sandhagen in that fight. Sandhagen took it to decision. It really showed how well-rounded he was in all kind of corners of the game. And Deiveson, I hate to say it, but I do see, if he loses this fight, I can see a few fight losing streak, and unfortunately, probably retirement soon. He is getting older. I hate to say it because I love him. He's one of my, one of the fighters I, kind of grew up in the UFC watching. But Sandhagen's just in a better spot in his career, in a better spot in, age wise, skill wise. He's got, everything you could ever want as a fighter. It's like a my player on UFC. He can knock you out. He can sub you. He can, fuck around and take you to decision. He can do it all. He kind of, I always feel like he has at least a grasp of the fight, less so in the Umar fight. He wasn't really dictating that fight so much. But usually every fight you see him out there kind of dictating what's going on, whether, he's in the inside of the octagon, whether he's up against the cage. Everything seems pretty deliberate. Very good technical fighter. So with all that said, I'm taking Sandhagen here. I wouldn't doubt it, if it ended up going to decision. Because I think both these guys are so dangerous towards each other. I don't know if they'll want to engage as much as us as fans would like them to. But if we get lucky and if these guys are feeling frisky, we could see some some sparks fly on Saturday night. But yeah, I think Sandhagen takes this one, and then he has, a better shot at going towards that title there.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it a clean sweep for Cory Sandhagen. To be honest, I just think he's a little bit better everywhere, opposed to Figgy. If they want to strike, I think Cory wins the majority of those exchanges. If Figgy wants to grapple, I think Cory can grapple right back and win those exchanges. He did it in a fair amount of them against Umar Nurmagomedov. He fared off the majority of Umar's takedown threats. He just kind of grambied out of them. I don't see Figgy being able to take him down and control him. Cory might do it to him. Minus 500 steep, super chalky. I don't know if I'd necessarily play it. I'd probably parlay it with something. Maybe in like a 2 or 3 legger, but yeah, I don't think too much more else really needs to be said. I think Cory's just a better all around fighter, and I haven't really heard anyone give me a good a good take on why Figgy would beat Cory. I just haven't heard a single good argument for it, and I don't know if we will hear one. I'm going with Cory Sandhagen.
Yeah, I saw a video this week that someone interviewing Cory, I forget if it was ayahuasca or mushrooms, but he had a recent trip and felt that he entered a new level of understanding MMA.
Oh, let's go.
So I don't know how much that plays, but I'm like, all right.
Luke, I think we were on the same side in all these fights because I went Mason Jones, Smotherman, Montel Jackson, Ponzinibbio, Bo, and Cory.
Sounds like I got a clean sweep coming on Saturday. It's never good. It's never good when there's two guys picking the same thing. I will add on to that.
Only when you're involved in those, bro.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's usually me and Ryan. But I will say on Deiveson's side, I did see a few pictures of him this week. He didn't. I don't think he didn't post any of them himself, but I did see some media pictures of him, just kind of catching him candidly. He didn't look like he was in the best shape.
Yeah, I saw that.
Obviously, he is a professional UFC fighter, so I can't really talk shit about shape, especially being the lazy piece of shit that I am. But he didn't. Sandhagen's a guy that's always going to be 100% prepared for any fight, and cardio, conditioning. He's going to be in peak performance come Saturday. And I just didn't really, just with the eye test, I didn't see that with Figueiredo. So
and he's a 5-rounder, so.
Yeah, exactly. So I could see Sandhagen taking him into the deep waters, getting him tired, and just putting it on him.
Yeah.
Do you think, I got a question, do you think that Figueiredo is too far in his career? I don't know if they would do this, but if he were, you could even say a retirement fight to get back down to flyweight, and since there's no movement in that weight class, they would give him the title shot maybe. Do you think there's any world that would happen? Or he wouldn't even want that? I know we just talked about him looking bigger.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be opposed to that if they're like, hey, he's like, hey, I want one more and I'm done.
Especially if Pantoja is still holding the belt, because they do have prior history. Like Figgy beat Pantoja years back.
I know we have Manuel Cape on the rise in that division as well, but I mean, we just saw Pantoja defeat a guy who's never fought MMA.
Yeah, I could see Pantoja, like he has guys there to fight with Kai Kara-France and Manuel Cape, but there's not a long line, and given his prior history with Figgy, like it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if Figgy went down and they gave him that title shot. I think it would have made more sense if it were to have aligned with like before Figgy fought his last fight before he lost to Petr Yan.
Yeah.
And he was like on a couple fight win streak. But if Figgy's willing to make the weight cut, and if the belt is still held by Pantoja, I don't see why they wouldn't entertain that.
Yeah, I just think it would be difficult. I don't think the UFC would have a tough time saying yes to that fight. I think it'd be more on Figgy's side.
Yeah.
You see a lot of these fighters getting older and kind of having a tough time making the weight. Just visually this week, like we mentioned before, it looked like Figgy was on the heavier side. Probably already struggling to make weight this week. Maybe not struggling, but definitely a tougher weight cut. Because I saw a picture back on Monday. I think it's more, we saw with Alex Pereira, like him moving up, like he wasn't really able to make 185 anymore. You kind of just get older and your metabolism doesn't really move that quick. You can't really, process all that water weight, all that fat off your body to, kind of lose weight as much. So I think if he could make it, I don't see why they wouldn't, entertain it on the UFC side, especially with, the kind of lack of excitement that we get with the matchups in that weight class. But I just don't think from Figgy's side he'll do it. I don't think he has any desire to. He's so far in his career at this point, he doesn't really have, great. He wins the belt again. Like, it went back and forth so much between him and Moreno. A title fight really doesn't really mean too much to his career at this point.
And I know, talking about fighters going down, I know Cejudo's plan was he wanted to go out and beat Song Yadong and then potentially go down and fight Pantoja. And that was kind of like in the works a little bit behind the scenes, just due to how stagnant that flyweight division has been. So kind of just like furthering your like question there, it has been talked about amongst other fighters. Cejudo. So it's a bit like, all right, he said, she said. Is that even true? Or are you just like going for clicks? Who really knows? Yeah. But it has been thrown around, so it wouldn't shock me.
I think at this point they're going to have to start bringing the women into that weight class to kind of make it exciting again, because there's such a lack of movement that you don't really see much going on.
Kayla Harrison will struggle to make weight.
Dude, you know what? Hate me all you want. I think she's got a good chance against a few of those guys. So.
Oh fuck!
Yeah,
well,
either way, I think it's a low percentage chance fight for Figgy to go down. Just spitballing ideas, really. I feel like we just talked about last week with Anthony Smith. Retirement fight wasn't the best matchup, and then we get the DP announcement against Max Holloway. So it's like, oh, maybe they would, entertain something like that for a retirement fight for one of the UFC's legends. Would be cool, but obviously we are not matchmakers.
Not yet. But thank you everyone for tuning in. We will be coming out with another podcast next weekend for a big pay-per-view, and we are pumped up for these upcoming fights.